Bear down, Chicago Bears. Let's talk about starters. Let's talk about who it is that we're going to be taking to the field when this team is ready to go. And the rookies are reporting today. Still no word on Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze. Have they signed their contracts yet or not? We don't have any clarification. I'm going to hit refresh here real quick, see if there's been any kind of progress made. Nothing yet. We are. Chicago Bears say that they are making progress on the rookie contract, but that is all that they've said so far. Now, Caleb Williams was a full participant in the rookie minicamp and the OTAs and mandatory minicamp. So he cannot participate in practice until his contract is signed. So, unless we see something really pop in immediately that says, hey, he's signed right now and he'll be ready to go, then we might have a tiny bit of a problem. So, and like Crimson says here, it's a hard knock episode. So, it could be that we get, the drama of him not signing is their first episode. So we'll see what happens here. But the purpose of today is we want to talk about who are the starters, or what's the projected starting lineup look like. And for the most part, I went individually on down the line just to give you guys kind of a clarity or an idea of who's going to be that guy. And we're going to start off with, obviously, at the quarterback position, the number one guy, no matter what, is Caleb Williams. It's his job at this point to lose by showing that he is not prepared. And I don't think that that is the case at all, leaving Tyson Bagent as the number two quarterback and the backup. And then there's still some uncertainty about what happens next. On the roster currently, you have Brett Rypien and you have Austin Reed. Brett Rypien would be the emergency quarterback at this point, I think, as a third stringer. Austin Reed, most likely. And by the way, I think the Bears do take two quarterbacks into the game, most probably. I don't know how they're going to do this, but could be three quarterbacks they're going to take into it, and maybe a fourth emergency quarterback. DJ Moore played quarterback in high school, so there's some potential there just in case something catastrophic happens. But the one questions that you have after Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent is, are you going to hold on to Brett Rypien, or are you going to hold on to Austin Reed? And at this point, I don't know that there's any upside on Brett Rypien. You can jettison him, if you will, for Austin Reed. You don't save any money, or you could do the vice versa. You could do the other move too. But it looks like the Bears are pretty high on Austin Reed at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what that third string is going to look like. So, but this is basically Caleb Williams' job to lose. Now, and I'm still hearing Goofy's claim Bagent is quarterback one. You're going to hear that no matter what. You're going to hear that people do not like Caleb Williams because painted fingernails, cried after a game. You know what I mean? Like they're going to point out anything negative that they have. Like, you're not manly enough. Neither are you. That's why you're sitting there bitching about some, teenager. Like, ew. Gross. Anyway, so at the wide receiver positions, I think it's pretty simple here. DJ Keenan and Rome. It is my understanding that the Bears are going to start with a 3 wide receiver set. Now, I did say it was possible, and I'm going to show you the chart that I gave you a long time ago that we'll go back over, in which I said that, it could be that they go with 2 tight end set, but it looks like they're going to go with the weapons on the field. So you can expect to see DJ, Keenan Allen, and Rome Dunze, and you'll see the major spot relief is going to be Tyler Scott. Also, Velus Jones Jr. is going to be in that mix as well. So DJ, Keenan, and Rome are going to be your starting wide receivers. And I don't think that there's really a question about this. Nothing that we've seen, nothing about anything that we've had any kind of conversation about says in any way that that Tyler Scott is going to supplant Rome Odunze coming out of, because he's a rookie. You don't want to start your rookies if you can help it. But I think that in this situation, Rome is the clear number 3 guy, with Keenan probably the slot, and Rome the Z receiver wideout. So then you have DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is going to be the starter. It looks like they've given him $8 million a year for 3 years. I am certain that he is going to be the starter. Khalil Herbert coming in at about $1 million is the most probable backup, followed by Roschon Johnson, and then one more guy on the roster, Travis Homer. However, there is Ian Reed, I think his name is out there, that could potentially supplant Travis Homer, but Travis Homer is one of the top players on your special teams. So it would seem the most obvious move to me, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm saying, when we talk about this, we're projecting a lot of times what the next move is going to be. But the most logical move, if I'm a Chicago Bear boss right now, is I want to go see if I can find some value for Khalil Herbert and see if I can call it $1 million swap. Khalil Herbert making about $1 million. If I could swap that contract for another contract and get somebody else in for about $1 million that is undervalued but serves me better at another position, that's what I would want to do. So, and the reason that I would want to do that is because I can't carry four running backs on the roster, and then I can't have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. It's just too much, right? You only have a 53-man roster. So most likely we see Khalil Herbert move, and maybe we see some defensive help kind of pull in, veteran minimum contract, or some young player in an even swap, somebody who hasn't really had an opportunity. So DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Travis Homer are going to be the people, in my opinion. We'll see whether or not that maintains, but let's move on here. Cole Kmet is certainly going to be the number 1 tight end. Gerald Everett is a backup, and of course we have Mercedes Lewis, who is going to be the 3rd guy, and he's going to spell. Now, barring injury, Cole Kmet is the guy. The question for Cole Kmet, of course, this year is, will he be able to get as many receptions as he did last year with such a stocked and loaded team? And I would venture to say that when you start to look at what the Chicago Bears are potentially capable of doing, I think there's a lot of cause for a lot of excitement right now for every Bears fan. You've got Caleb Williams, who I'm not convinced that he's generational as a talent. I'm convinced that he is a solid quarterback, a solid rookie quarterback. It doesn't mean that he's great; just means that he's solid. He can play the game. Now, if that is the case, how do you get the ball to Rome? How do you get the ball to Keenan? How do you get the ball to DJ, DeAndre, and Cole Kmet? And then what does Tyler Scott get? I mean, what about Gerald Everett? These guys this is a great and talented team. So this is going to be very, very interesting to see. But I think Cole Kmet, no matter what, is your prohibitive starter. Gerald Everett, number 2, and Mercedes Lewis is a blocker, but he's going to come in at number 3. Now, for this portion, I just put up my old chart here. This was my old chart that I told you guys about before. Now, you'll notice that there are 12 men on the field. The reason there's 12 men on the field is because I was unsure at this point whether or not the tight ends, whether we would have Gerald Everett starting or Rome Odunze starting, just in case. So that's why there's 12 men here. So Gerald Everett not on the list. But this is what the starting lineup allegedly looks like. Now, there are some questions to be had at this point. First, Braxton Jones. Is he a lock at this point? Yes. Tevin Jenkins. Is he a lock at this point? Barring injury, by the way. Is he a lock at this point? Yes. Ryan Bates. Is he a lock at center? No. Nate Davis. Is he a lock at right guard? Also no. Right tackle Darnell Wright, is he a lock? Yes. So let's talk about center Ryan Bates, and let's talk about right guard Nate Davis. There's some discussion being had right now that Nate Davis may not be on his way out because it's $12 million. His contract is $11.7 million, but his it's 2 years. So, but his dead cap space is going to be about $12 million. You can't move on from Nate Davis. You are stuck with Nate Davis, basically. And by the way, I don't mean that disrespectfully, even though it sounds that way. Nate Davis he's a lock at this point. So if you don't start Nate Davis, then you are wasting $11 million of your payroll. But here's what I heard. What I heard was that there's a lot of conversation right now about Nate Davis, just that the Bears are done with him. That maybe, just maybe, if Ryan Bates is the better player at right guard or Coleman Shelton is the better player than Nate Davis at right guard, they will get the nod over Nate Davis. And thus, the other one of the group would end up being the center. So right now it's Ryan Bates, but let's just say Ryan Bates could move over to right guard. He is better from all measurements than Coleman Shelton at this point. However, that would mean that Nate Davis would then be on the bench, or he would become the sub for Tevin Jenkins, depending on how Tevin Jenkins holds up. Now, the best thing that could happen for those guys would be an injury to, I want to say excuse me. I want to say Tevin Jenkins. I mean, that's the best thing that probably happened for Nate Davis. Or maybe we're just going to stick with it. I don't think that we are. I think that the logical move for the Chicago Bears is to put the best man at every single position. And I'm not sure at this point that Nate Davis is going to be that guy. Here's the other part about Nate Davis. Nate Davis doesn't like to practice historically and notoriously does not like to practice, but he shows up in the games. And that's what matters, or that's what should matter anyway. So if that is the case and Nate Davis is healthy, then and he's playing at a top level, then I'm sure that he'll be the guy. But there is talk that the Bears are prepared for Nate Davis to move on, and that they're prepared to move on from Nate Davis. So we'll see how this plays out. But that is the way that this lines up. This is what the offense most likely looks like, except Gerald Everett again. And again, it could be Rome Odunze or Gerald Everett, but I'm going to say at this point, Rome Odunze. The guy seems like just a fantastic a teammate overall. Not even to say player, teammate. He seems like a fantastic teammate for all of these guys. So I think that this is the way that it lines up. So let's talk about the defensive line. The defensive line, most likely, this is how it lines up at this point. Even if Yannick Ngakoue or Emmanuel Ogbah come in, they're going to come in after the first week or so of training camp, where the Bears are going to have a chance to see what it is that they can see. And you'll notice, by the way, that I have an old picture here of Gervon Dexter. Gervon Dexter was using 98 until Montez Sweat got here. Montez Sweat took 98, and Gervon Dexter moved on to number 99. So the starting lineup on the defensive line: Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings, and DeMarcus Walker. Now, the places where there could be cracks in this logic would be if we get some kind of massive free agency defensive tackle, which I don't think that there's one out there that we're really looking at or would really want. And there's no trades, by the way. It should be noted that the Bears are very, very limited this year in the options that they have for any kind of trades, because if they were to make a trade, and if you go look at Spot Rack to see what each person's value is, what their dead cap space is, things like that, then you would find there's not a lot of options that the Bears have other than to just outright release some people in order to save payroll, but it does not make the team appreciably better. So you might not see a lot of moves in that case. Again, that's why I keep talking about a Khalil Herbert million for million swap. Something like that seems to be like one of the only really viable options. You still have to sign Rome Odunze. You still have to sign Caleb Williams. You're going to be taking $6 million into the season. So you don't have a lot of options, which is why it is important that Nate Davis perform at a high level. But Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings, DeMarcus Walker, and then again, an emergency guy that could be brought in. Of course, we still have Dominique Robinson. There's still Jake Martin, Byron Cowart. There are still, and then Keith Randolph could be, he's on the roster, could be part of it. So perhaps we're going to see some of these guys really kind of step up and maybe just become good options. But this is the way that it looks right now. And look, I don't have a problem with this. I want to stress that I think the leap is about to happen with Gervon Dexter. So I'm pretty comfortable here that if nothing else, this is going to be a phenomenal run stopping team. So we'll leave it at that for right now. How well DeMarcus Walker does at pass rushing. I think Crimson yesterday pointed out that, in the same amount of time, DeMarcus Walker had as many sacks as Yannick Ngakoue, which, by the way, was not a lot. I mean, we should look at the position and say that, 4.5 and 4. I mean, there were 8.5 sacks in the position. So is that great? No. Is that good? Yeah, it actually is. That's okay. If we could get 8 sacks from every single person on this line, we're actually a really good pass rushing team. I don't think that it happens, but that could be the case. Now, DeMarcus Walker, I keep telling you guys, I keep seeing these things from him on Instagram, on Twitter. He is locked in right now. He believes that he is that guy, and this is going to be his season for a breakout. And if it is, shout out, because we're going to need it. Now, what does it look like for the rest of the defense? Well, Tremaine, Jack, and TJ, and I know I have it out of order, but it's the Sam, Mike, and the Will. So Jack is going to be your Sam, Tremaine is going to be the Mike, and TJ is the Will. Now, here's what I'm going to say about this. This is one of the better linebacking cores, even though we have Jack Sanborn coming off of rookie season. This guy really had a nose for the ball. And TJ Edwards just absolutely has a nose for the ball. If I have a problem with this lineup in any way, it is Tremaine Edmunds. But if it's a problem, it's a very minor problem. And the minor problem is that we pay too much. It is my opinion that we are paying way too much at that position. I believe he's coming in somewhere in the neighborhood north of $15 million per year. Where Jack Sanborn's playing on a rookie minimum and TJ Edwards just a couple $1 million a year. So I think that and by the way, TJ Edwards, a workhorse. He did not miss tackles. He knew his place. This guy, I would really like to see, it would be my opinion, I would really like to see what TJ looks like at the Mike position. And I don't know that makes the team better, but in the event that you're again, freeing up some payroll, we'll see. You know what I mean? I have no idea yet. So we're gonna, but again, like, this is the starting lineup. This is what we're gonna see on the field, and I hope that this comes through fantastically. Now, at the cornerbacks position is the men, and it's Tyreek Stevenson, and coming into his second year after an up and down but generally positive season, and Jalen Johnson, who arguably was the number one cornerback in all of football last year, despite having to sit out a few games with an injury. He finally got it together. He started to become the ball hawk that we've been hoping that he would become at some point. Whatever that killer instinct is finally showed up in Jalen Johnson last season, and he looked like a superstar. And we paid him like a superstar, but here's the great part about Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson took a 4-year instead of a 5-year contract so that he could get back out into the free agency market and try to get that gigantic big deal for that final big payout while he's still in his prime. He took a shorter deal. He made a favorable deal with the Chicago Bears. And shout out to Jalen Johnson, because it is my opinion, by the way, that Jalen Johnson probably could have gone out there and gotten $5 to $6 more million per year. Okay. He could have held out. He could have done a number of things, but instead he did what was best for the team. Now, I want to say thank you to Jalen Johnson for that, but he doesn't owe the Chicago Bears anything. He doesn't owe anybody anything. The fact that he did that was a gift, I want to say, to the Chicago Bears, because he was worth number one money. And number one money, I think, was Jair Alexander, coming in at around 23 to 25 million. So the fact that Jalen Johnson comes in at, I want to say it was 17 million, it is just incredible. And again, shout out to Jalen Johnson for making that happen. Now, I wanted to, I missed it. There we go. Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker. I got this shit out of order after doing all this. Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker, those are going to be your safeties coming in. I didn't really have easy pictures of them. There's no picture of them together yet. So Jaquan Brisker, the guy is coming into the third year. He had his big move last year. Looked the part. Looked the part. Now here's the other part to this is, are they free safety? Are they strong safety? And it looks like they both the way that Matt Eberflus wants to run this is basically two strong safeties. So the blitz could come from anywhere. The plays could come from anywhere. Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, both, they like to hit people. They like to make an impact on people. So these two guys. Now, Jonathan Owens will not be at the beginning of practice because he will be at the Olympics. So we won't have Jonathan Owens at the start of training camps, but he's not going to be there for very long. He's just going for like the first ceremony and for like, I think the first 3 days, and then he will be in training camp. So in the event of injury, then I think he's a solid player, so we should be able to substitute him very well, and there won't be anything, it's just going to be a little bit odd. And Plank says going to be weird not seeing him in that 33 jersey. You know what? I agree with you. And using the number 1, that was the number that he wanted all this time anyway. And when Justin Fields was gone, the opportunity was there, so he took it. So it should be an interesting. And I think, look, in his mind, because that was his number in high school and I think I want to say college, or high school at least. That being said, I think that he's going to feel way more comfortable and have something to prove, because he's going to feel like, hey, this is the real me, if you will. And I hope that he I hope that he lights it up. Remember, Eddie Jackson got a big amount of money and fell apart. Jalen Johnson got a big amount of money. I hope he holds it all together. Remember, we gave Tremaine Edmonds a big amount of money, and I think that Tremaine Edmonds is a fantastic middle linebacker. However, I look at the beginning of this season, I felt like he missed a lot more tackles than he should have. He did not seem like he was locked in, and I don't think he got locked into the season until maybe that 5th or the 6th game, and that was part of the problem with the team overall. I just didn't feel like he was locked in. It doesn't mean he's not playing decent football, but he wasn't special, and we're paying him special money, and I don't feel like that value was there. So I hope that it's there this year, which is why I keep bringing up the fact that Tremaine, I love the guy, but God, it's a lot of money. Now, Patrick Scales and Cairo Santos going to be your long snapper and kicker. And guys, I don't know what to say more superlative than Cairo Santos. You know what I mean? Like after Cody Parkey, after what we've gone through, after everything that's transpired, to find a kicker as accurate and as good as we have in Cairo Santos is certainly a blessing. And I'm glad that he is locked up for a few more years. So I think we're going to be really good in the kicking game. And the reason for that falls to this man as we close this out, and that's going to be Tory Taylor. Tory Taylor will be the starting punter. And this guy, Legatron, if you will, is a monster, to the point that the Iowa college football team last year basically wanted to vote him the MVP of their offense, because he is such a powerful and booming kicker. Now, the question is going to be this, and this is where I'm going to say that we might have a tiny problem, a tiny problem. And thank you for the $5 bomb. I appreciate that. Don't sleep on Kyler Gordon either. Kyler Gordon, the nickel. I think between, and I know I kind of whiffed on going through them with the backups, but between Kyler Gordon and Terrell Smith, it did not matter to me if Jalen Johnson was gone. Now, that's no disrespect to Jalen Johnson. I think Jalen Johnson is a top guy, but in my mind, money matters. And should anything have gone wrong with Jalen Johnson not being there, I have every faith that Kyler Gordon and Terrell Smith would have stepped up. And as in fact, if you look at the ratings and if you grade out players, and there are plenty of different places that grade out players, Terrell Smith and Kyler Gordon graded out almost as high as Jalen Johnson. So there would be a drop-off, but that drop-off would not be so significant that we wouldn't be able to recover from that. So thank you for the $5 bomb, and I am not sleeping on Kyler Gordon. In fact, Kyler Gordon and Terrell Smith were two of my favorite players on the team last year. And then King Book of World says, Edmonds was hurt, so I'll give a little pass, but this year he has to hit the ground. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was just, he didn't feel right at the beginning of the season. He didn't He wasn't making the play. And here's the thing: the problem, the only problem that I have with Tremaine Edmonds was T.J. Edwards was locked in, and Jack Sanborn was a ridiculous surprise. I did not expect to see Jack Sanborn stepping up the way that he did. And I mean, again, TJ Edwards, I mean, I think he had 168 tackles. TJ Edwards was all over the field. He was a monster. He was a run stopper. The guy was fantastic all season long. So to see Tremaine not start off as well before getting locked in, you're making the big money. You got to be the one that's locked in from day one. You know what I mean? And Jack Sanborn, again, he is such a welcome surprise on this team. We've got 3 linebackers who, in my opinion, are just absolute ball hawks. Like, I think these guys are, I think they are the heart and soul of this defense. And I know Jalen's there. I know Montez Sweat is there. But here's the thing. In the old days, you guys know, I don't have to tell you, but in the old days, you didn't get past Brian Urlacher. You didn't get past Lance Briggs. You didn't get past Nick Roach. You didn't do it, right? And we haven't seen that in a while. Well, we started to see that this past season. Now, was it perfect? No. This team struggled mightily, but the place where we didn't really struggle, again, after that first couple of games, again, and also Tremaine did not look horrible. He just missed a few tackles and didn't seem like he was locked in. But this linebacker core is one of the better linebacker cores in all of football right now, and they're only going to get, in my opinion, better as we go. They're going to have another year, and we got Larry coming in from Singapore. What's going on, my man? Hope you're doing all right. And as a matter of fact, when I get done, I will we'll do that call. By the way, that's a friend of mine from overseas. You may not be seeing it because this is on X. Never mind. Anyway, so Tory Taylor, back to Tory Taylor. Tory Taylor, the one question that I have for Tory Taylor is, can you, if Caleb Williams is as good as advertised, you're not going to be kicking from your 20-yard line anymore. You're not going to be kicking from your 30-yard line. You're going to have to boom kicks 50, 60, 70 yards. That's not what you're going to have to do. What you're going to have to do is be able to get past, you're going to be at the 50-yard line, and you're going to have to be putting in a 40-yard kick. And can you nail people, and can you create that opportunity for the Bears to just pin people back, to let the defense really go to work? That's the only question that there is for Tory Taylor, because we know that the leg strength is there. So Rick Diaz says, do you think you guys are going to the Super Bowl? Which is Chicago question for me to you. I live here in Chicago, but am not a Bears fan at all. I would love, coffin kick. There you go. I would love to see the Bears in the Super Bowl. Do I think that that's possible? Yes. Do I think that's probable? No. Do I think that the Bears? Let me also say, and I bring this up. Thank you for coming in. Hit the like button, by the way, if you haven't already. But Rick, to answer your question, if you haven't watched before, what I've been saying since the beginning of last season is that the Bears were going to get much better as the season went on, and they were going to build up, and they were going to become like the new Philadelphia team. And if you remember, Philadelphia didn't look great, and then Jalen Hurts kind of got it together, and they were in the Super Bowl the next year. Do I think the Bears can be in the Super Bowl? Yes. Do I think they will? No. It's so tough. Everything has to fall in place, and I don't think that the Bears have the depth to get there, but I think that they're on the cusp of being a playoff team. And I would love to see the Bears get into the playoffs and win at least one game. That, to me, would be a successful season for the Chicago Bears. Now, in the event that the Bears get locked in towards the end of the season and start looking better, all bets are off. If you could do what I say that I think they're going to do, I think the Bears are going to go 13-4. I think they're going to win where they're supposed to win. And the reason that I say that is because after last season, there were multiple games on the Bears. The Bears should have won a lot more than they won. There's no reason other than just a lack of execution that the Bears didn't go 11-6 and eliminate the Green Bay Packers from the playoffs. And one of those wins should have been we were up 26-14 with 4 minutes and 54 seconds left against the Detroit Lions. There's no reason that we should have given up the points and not scored any points in the meantime. Either one of those things would have changed the direction of this team dramatically. Catching the ball. I think Tory Taylor, or not Tory, oh my God, Robert Tonyan and his stupid little drop. And then later on, not Velus Jones, but Darnell Mooney and his stupid little drop cost us the Cleveland game. I'm not pointing out, I am pointing them out by name, but they made drops at key times in that game, which cost us that. Now you take those two, what should have been wins right there, you take those two and you add that to the win bracket, and now you're looking at a 9-8 team. Then you go back to the fourth game of the season when we lost to the Broncos. We had no business losing to the Broncos. Again, that's one of those games when you go back and you look at it, Tremaine did not look like he was locked in. You lock in, and the Bears scored 4 touchdowns, so good for them. But you were missing one piece there, and that was stopping the Broncos when it mattered. Now, if that had happened, now you're looking at a 10-7 team, and you're looking at a much better team. I mean, we were this close. We were this close, and I think we lost. We lost the first Vikings game. I think we should have won the first Vikings game as well. That was where I think that was Tyson Bagent. I kept feeling like we were going to just like we're going to thread that needle and it was going to happen. But that suddenly now you're talking about 11 wins and 6 losses. This is now an incredible team that all they had to do was sneak into the playoffs at that point and shock somebody. You know what I mean? Like, so we didn't get that done. But I think that this team was way better than people were giving it credit for. It just, again, it was not locked in at the beginning of the season. Mistakes were made. Coaching, we're not coaching properly. We're not doing the little things. And by the way, if you didn't see it, there is an interview from Jalen Johnson. I want to say it's back in March or February, where he goes into, we didn't practice situational football. We seem to always be practicing to get people onto the right page, but not to we were coaching ourselves. We weren't coaching ourselves to get better against other teams. So one of the things that was happening was, somebody who does jet sweeps. We were never training for the jet sweep. All we did was talk about it, and we didn't even walk through it. That is a problem. It's a massive problem. Now, here's the good part. The good part is that this team is no longer that team. This team is now a team where you can train for those moments where you don't have to go through fundamentals, and you shouldn't have to go through fundamentals with pro level paid NFL players, but you do. You shouldn't have to put your scheme out there for everybody to learn and be stuck on the lowest common denominator's learning curve, but you are. However, we've been in this scheme and in this system now for a few years, and you might be saying to yourself, what about Shane Waldron? What about that? And that's fair enough. I mean, that is an issue. However, the team has now played together, except for just a couple of people on this team. They've played together. So there's familiarity. Familiarity breeds confidence and a calmness. This team is going to be really, really good, in my opinion. And I'm just happy to be along for the ride at this point, because it is my belief that I don't need Caleb Williams to be the guy that everybody thinks that he might be. I don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't need him to be that. You know what I need him? I only need him to be Mitchell Trubisky of 2018. If he does that, then the Bears are 13-4 and they're going through the playoffs. And you know what we have at that point? Cairo Santos instead of Cody Parkey. Okay. This is a team that is just that close to being great. Now, again, this is going to come down to depth. We don't have the depth. I hope that we work on the depth. And by the way, next season in the draft, I would be looking at a massive, massive rebuilding of the defense. So I'm getting way ahead of myself, but I would say that Austin Booker, is probably going to be a starter going into that next season. We move on from DeMarcus Walker. Why? 8.66 million reasons why. We're paying DeMarcus Walker he's probably well paid for what he does. 8.6 million for DeMarcus Walker is a good deal. But if Austin Booker comes along, then that position, $1 million for a fantastic physical, long, perfect prototype for Matt Eberflus defense, edge rusher, which Austin Booker would be at that point. So there's really I think this defense is going to get leaps and bounds better going into the next season. Also, by the way, just to Nate Davis, I would say, gone, and we'll probably have Kiran and Magaji, and then we'll have Braxton Jones move into right guard, or Coleman Shelton or Ryan Bay. But these guys, some of these guys are on 1-year contracts, so maybe we don't see Coleman Shelton here beyond this year. There's going to be some moves, but again, I think the defense is going to be incredibly strengthened over the next season, off season, if you will. And future is so bright for the Chicago Bears. But guys, that's my time. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that like button. I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, this is going to be a special season, I think. And we've got the weakest schedule, or one of the weakest schedules in all of football. So there's no reason we can't head into this with that big swagger and start to really just knock some people's teeth out early on in the season. I know I'm not supposed to say that because you're going to get penalized or whatever. The NFL is soft. It's getting soft anyway. But I think this is going to be a fantastic team. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll see you again tomorrow. And remember, bear down and fuck Green Bay. We'll talk to you again very, very